Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Opinionated SEO Opinions. And this time we are joined by Montserrat Cano, international SEO and digital marketing consultant. Welcome, Montserrat.
Hello, ladies. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, we are very excited to having you as well. And I am here with our hosts, Tori Gray and Sam Torres. Hello, how are we feeling?
Hello. Excited. Let's do this.
Yes, all of us are excited. So this is going to be focusing on international SEO with the technical aspect. So we're going to be getting tons of information from both sides and combine them into our everyday challenges, I believe.
Monse, would love to learn a little bit about your background and just who you are. Introduce yourself to our audience.
Right. Okay. So, as you said, my name is Montserrat Cano, Monse. I work in international SEO and digital marketing strategy. I don't know what to say, to be honest. I used to live in London for a very long time, and then I moved back home a couple of years ago. And now I am just working with international brands on their projects. I'm very, very excited to be here, ladies, with you.
Awesome. Where is home?
Madrid, Spain.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Love it. I love Spain. I want to go back as quickly as possible.
Yeah, please do so.
So the first question would be, which multilingual strategies do you prioritize and how do you implement them from a technical point of view?
Well, all of these strategies will definitely drive from much larger marketing considerations as well. So it's not like I start thinking, oh, do I need to use hreflang? Excuse me there. Or do I need to use, do I need to translate my site to French language, into French? Or I don't think about this in the first place. I think about whether I actually do need to do that. So I consider all the larger marketing strategies in the first place. I consider resources. I consider the actual will to operate internationally. And once I have all that nailed down, I just consider the URL structure of the website. If there's anything to be changed, perhaps, or if there's anything to be optimized or implemented, if it is a new website, I consider, for example, top-level domains, whether I actually need a top-level domain or a subdirectory or even a subdomain. Not very often, but I do that sometimes. I consider language, but also not just language, but also the cultural behavior of the target market, because that's what I'm targeting, a target market, not a language per se. That comes later on. So I consider anything to do with content format, language that I need to use, etc., etc.
So if I can, it sounds like you really start thinking bigger picture information architecture and then kind of go down from there. And I love your call out of it's about a target market and not just a target language. I feel like I've definitely seen a lot of projects where people are just thinking about that. And like, for example, tackling Spanish as a whole, it's like, no, Spanish changes drastically from market to market, and the cultural implications to it. So love that call out, because I think it's too easy for us from a technical perspective sometimes to just say like, well, this is my language code and that's what I'm going after. And there still needs to be that human element as part of it. Because to your point, that's what we're targeting. We're targeting users. Ideally not just search engines. So yeah, really love that call out.
Yeah, I'd also say like what I personally run into a little more frequently is that they do target markets in terms of their SEO technical structure, and yet they don't actually localize or specialize. It's just kind of duplicated across languages. So both are, that's just a failure to reach that market and those users, and you're not really going to help your SEO efforts either. So,
and another problem with that is that you duplicate effort, because what's wrong with actually getting things right the first time? which might not be the case. I mean, you can, there might be mistakes and things that just don't work because of other considerations, other variables that perhaps are not under our own control. But I mean, if you think this through from the very beginning, and then you implement them, you will be more prone to actually, make sense of it all and get it right the first time without having to rethink where you went wrong and why you went wrong, etc., etc. It's very, very important because resources, time, money, budget, etc., etc., are not finite, are not infinite. They're very, very finite.
Yeah.
Yeah. And trying to retrofit into localization and adding internationalization. Ooh, it is expensive. And a lot of times, to your point, if you haven't done it right the first time, you may have actually dug yourself a hole now. So instead of growing from nothing, you're growing from a negative or from a deficit. So definitely taking the time to think through it, and give quality over just let's put some stuff up. I think internationalization is definitely a place where we see this more often in SEO. Of like, no, when you're going to do it, let's do it right. It's not like we can just put something up there and fix it later. Like Google's going to remember, and users will too, right? Like if you localize something and really, let's say, one of probably my favorite examples in marketing and localization is just talking about like color, or even just like what does a thumbs up mean to different communities. It can get real bad. So
you definitely can. Some words just do not mean the same. I had a project not a long time ago that this was for Spanish, but for another Spanish market, not Spain, Spanish speaking market I meant. And there were a few words in there which we know them. We all know them. It's just we don't use them in the same way. And we wouldn't expect them to be in there, in the banner, for example, or in the URL. It would just be very, 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 very wrong. Very wrong.
Yeah. It just kind of gives you that like, oh, you don't really understand me. You're not really for me kind of feeling.
No, absolutely not.
And users remember that, even if sometimes they don't articulate it or can't put their finger on it. People remember how a brand makes them feel, for sure.
And that's the reason why you actually need somebody to oversee all these localization projects, because there might be things that you actually don't see, but they are there. And so if you actually take into account everything that needs doing from the start, there is more possibilities that you actually get things right first time and not having to go back. Because there is another issue with all this, and it's also the brand repercussions, the negative repercussions on the brand. Because if you don't take this into account, and you decide to launch in Switzerland, being a French brand, for example, taking into account that French spoken in both countries is very different. Even French spoken in France, in different areas in France, is rather different. You can be in a very bad situation, and your brand will actually get negatively affected, because once you say this has happened, and as a brand you go back and fix it, then it is a PR aspect that you cannot really overcome very easily, because people will have a negative perception of this brand. And remember that the online space is overcrowded at this moment in time. You need to stand out for the right reasons.
And also you have to protect yourself from the people who really love ranting on the internet. And
trolls. We love them.
Yeah. That used to be a hobby of mine, just going through all these trolls. It used to be quite fun, actually. Some of them were very witty, and what I used to remember is thinking, how much time they have on their hands, because I don't have much. I'm just relaxing here. In 5 minutes time, I will just go and forget about this, and these people will actually go on and on and on forever and ever.
Right? Like, I want that kind of time. Dang, that sounds great.
So we touched a little bit upon the larger marketing considerations as well with that question, Montse. So how do you approach project management for international tech SEO initiatives?
I have to say that all situations are very different. So there have been situations or companies when you're working at companies or with companies that that have different teams in different regions, and others that are operating internationally, but they don't have a team in those regions. So work that you do is actually different. So this is more organizational rather than anything else. Um, and in any case, there is a lot of collaboration to be done, collaboration with the different specialisms or different teams in different countries. This can get particularly difficult when there are different teams in the variety of countries or target markets that you are operating in, because everyone is as a human being are different. They will have different expectations and different pressures. So you have to take into account as a project manager what they feel, how they are working, and what is working and what is not, so that you can have a much better and informed opinion when you are setting up the project by itself. So this is something I am very careful with, having done this a few times. People are not working for you, they are working with you. And that is rather important. But you also have to set up expectations as well, saying, well, I am project managing all this. This is my objective. Because we are, as a company, trying to reach this other objective, and this is what we are going to be doing. Are there any issues that you see with this? Anything that, any ways we can collaborate, etc., etc. So you go and ask them, and this is when you have already decided what to do. That you are definitely going to take this project on, because before then, as a project manager, you have to be very, very careful and be very much aware that there is a real need that is going to be covered. So, for example, there is an international brand present in France, in the US, the UK, Spain, Italy, etc., and maybe sales are kind of, dropping. And that is a real need. That is a real need to cover. You have to think, oh well, maybe it's not the website, maybe it's not the SEO, but maybe it is. So you need to audit. You need to have a very informed, or very much an informed opinion of what you are doing, because otherwise you might just be doing things just for the sake of doing them, and that is a waste of time and money as well. Other considerations are to do with time and resources or companies' visions, because if at this moment in time they tell you, well, sales are kind of dropping in France, say, or the US, and so we need to get them up, you need to make sure that the company's vision includes operating in the US in the future, because if they decide not to do it, because I'm saying this because I am having to face a similar situation right now with one client, because if they decide not to do it, then maybe it's not worth your time, not worth your while looking into France or the US market, for example. Have to be very careful with that.
Interesting. So it sounds like you do a lot of like qualifying before you engage on an internationalization project. And I love the examples that you're giving, so thank you. What are some of the things that you look at to help qualify? Like, for example, the one you had about sales are dropping across EMEA. So what kinds of things would you be looking at to figure out if an internationalization project, say that 5 times fast, would actually be what's needed or could support, they want to get sales back?
Sometimes it's not because of the sales, but I think because it is budget, it is money, that is very visible. That is really visible. And so people start to think, oh, well, sales are dropping, we must have a problem. And maybe there is not such a problem. So I look into it to see whether there is any issues with the website itself, with the market. I ask other people around me, because if I need to do market research, then I do it. As in market comparisons and everything, I do it, but generally speaking, there's somebody else who has done it before, or maybe a client who has this information. So I review it, and then I check properly whether sales are actually dropping because there's no, I don't know, there's no advertising. Maybe there's just no advertising and it's nothing to do with the tech. But a lot of the times it is to do with the tech. So, for example, when we think about migrations, every website is like a car, right? You've got a car. I mean, I don't drive, but everybody else around me drives and is mad about cars. So I think I know a bit about this. So if you've got a car and you buy it now, maybe in 2-3 years' time, you might be looking at changing it. And this is because the car
Mhm.
might be looking amazing, but it's not easy to drive anymore for whichever reason. And something is not working well. That makes sense? Well, this is what I gather from other drivers, right? So, and so happens with the tech on the websites. So this comes in correlation, not causation, but in correlation with users' expectations. And so if a website is downloading, for example, slowly, you need to look into that. Sometimes you need to change, you need to re-platform. Sometimes you actually need to take other actions, like have an audit and maybe just compress images or what have you. So I like to dig down to deep down very, very much into this.
And when you were mentioning that, I picked up migration. So I'd like to ask something about the site migrations when it comes to the international projects. How do international site migrations look different from the overall average site migrations?
Well, the international aspect of any brands, any business operation is just an added layer of complexity, and this gets reflected on websites as well. So you've got any website migration, and you need to look into all the aspects that you would normally look into for any website migration. But then you need to look into the hreflang, the set for the folders, for example, the different URL structure. Yeah, and also again, just looking at the larger marketing considerations, you need to think, well, is it worth my while looking into the Swiss version of my website, for example? Are we going to be paying attention to the Swiss markets, or are we closing that down? Or if this is not working, sometimes what I have come across, sometimes I think I'm jumping around a little bit, but from experience, some clients and some people I have worked with have said to me, well, this is not working because I think this brand in France, say, or any other region, it's just not well appreciated because we are not getting any sales, we are not getting any traffic, etc., etc. That is internal perception, and that is a bias. I think I call that a bias that I look into as well, because yeah, it's sometimes, it's very rarely that a brand is not appreciated. And I use this word because this is the word that I have used, have heard using very recently for a project. So you need to look into that and just check that the hreflang is not working, that the localization is not working either. The products is not the kind of products that perhaps people would buy in France or in any other market, because they've got other websites that are a lot stronger, or maybe just the version of those products, or the way the information is being put in there. You need to look into all that before you actually say, well, we are going to migrate this and we are going to close this down. So yeah, I mean, if we decide to do that, yes, 301 redirection perhaps, but consider that from a larger perspective in the first place.
That's certainly a lot of work. But I think you're totally right about doing the market research and really, vetting based on the question or the need that is coming from the company. Are we asking the right question, right? Are we tackling the right issue? Because I think that's something that just inherently happens with SEO and marketing all the time, and frankly, probably just business, is the amount of times that we rely on gut. And I think part of that is because for so long you had to. But now there's so much data available to us that I think there's definitely ways to start educating that gut and really maybe not even educating, but almost like backing it up and testing hypotheses. So with that, I'm going to jump to this question because I think it makes sense. Where do you see everything that's happening with AI and large language learning models and machine learning? How is that going to affect what's going on with internationalization? And I specifically want to call out, questions about like, there's now a lot of people who are using it for translation, which has always been kind of done, but it seems like maybe it's a little bit higher quality. Like how do you think it's going to affect internationalization? And do you think it's going to get better, worse? How do we make it better? Kind of all of that together.
Well, first of all, I would say embrace the future, because it has been so much hit going on against that recently. I think we all need to evolve with whatever it is available to us. We need to make sure that it is working to our own advantage. However, we can't expect it to do the work for us. And I think, well, this is my feeling, the feeling that I get from talking to many different people about this when it comes to translations or localization work, generally speaking, and international sites, is that they kind of expect this to speak the language for them, to translate the website. And there's plenty of I think it's add-ons like Wiglot and everything that do that for you as well. But even with those things, you need to supervise them. You need to be there so that it doesn't say something that it shouldn't, really, because an algorithm is not a human being. It's not a human being at all. There is a whole profession which is to do with languages, and I am a linguist myself, and I feel it cringes. I cringe whenever I hear somebody saying, "Oh, I'm going to translate something. I'm going to publish something that ChatGPT has told me." It's like, yeah, but how do you know that it is correct? It's like a schema markup. You can ask it. You can ask it to produce the schema markup that you can use for a website. But again, you need to check that it is actually correct, because if it is not correct, the GSC will actually pick it up as something which is not right, or as a warning or something. You want to avoid all that. So I am using machine learning tools to help me out with idea creation, idea generation. Yes, my time is finite as well. I think it's very useful to have it. However, you can't ask it to do the job for you. Seriously, if you can't speak French, get somebody who speaks French, and that's it. And get somebody who speaks French from a marketer's point of view as well. Somebody who can oversee this. Have somebody who can write marketing content for you in that language, for France, for French Antilles, for Switzerland, etc., because they are going to get it right first time. ChatGPT, maybe not, or maybe yes, but you don't know. You definitely don't know. And we all know that ChatGPT makes things up sometimes. Whenever it's got no references,
That's terrifying.
it is right, isn't it? I mean, I just don't trust it for that. But idea generation, definitely.
I've seen examples of that, even with schema, to your previous example, where what you generated, maybe it validates. So if you take the code and you're like, generate my schema for X, and then it does it. I think Crystal Carter posted this, and it just made up the URLs, right? Like it amends things.
Just
So always QA, and not just in terms of like the technical validation of the schema itself, also in terms of the contents and whether they're true.
that is
important.
a very good point,
Yeah.
actually. I point something that where I see ChatGPT and similar tools helping quite a lot is for larger websites that need to write product description. You have to be super careful there as well, because there might be some content duplication across the internet or across your website as well. So again, QA it, because you have to do it. You have to make sure that all the words are correct, that the style is in your brand, is your brand style, your brand it kind of complies with your brand guidelines, etc., etc. So many things, but it can definitely help you so much.
To that point, I see it kind of getting worse for a while, because I don't know that everyone thinks about the fact that it's not necessarily true or it's not actually the right word. And a lot of businesses are just going all in without adding that curation layer or the QA layer. And then, I think we'll learn in embarrassing ways, frankly. And I think people already are. I'm thinking of the Samsung story of, whoops, I shared my really confidential source code, and now ChatGPT has access to that information for Samsung. There's going to be things that go off the rails, and hopefully we'll learn from those big mistakes, and we'll all approach it in a, understanding its limitations and its downfalls, but still embracing the future and still making sure we leverage the speed that we get from it, and the other wins.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, at least for the US, I'm not going to be surprised if most corporations only learn it because of legal action that ends up being taken against them because something was posted on their website that hadn't been curated, that hadn't been looked at by human eyes. And so claims were being made that can't be supported. So they're going to, we've been seeing, all the talk about news publishers using AI to create content. And if these tools are making things up, like making up a quote for someone that wasn't actually said, they can be reported for libel, right? So it's just all of those things that I think, unfortunately, what we're going to see. And, it's going to be interesting to see, because the reason why I say I think that's what's going to happen in the US is because I do see the EU taking some considerations, and I feel like they're trying to keep up with what's going on. Meanwhile, I don't know if y'all remember, Congress was like, how does the internet work? And it's really
Those
great.
TikTok trials were fascinating.
It's really good. And
That's not how algorithm works. Yeah.
So all of that being said, I think, we're going to see almost like this string of litigation that's going to occur here pretty soon. Yeah. And that's where we're going to start really almost governing, I guess, from a how do we protect ourselves legally. AI tools, ChatGPT, all of them are tools to add to our tool set, but it cannot replace the strategic oversight, the why are we doing it, bringing it back to the business objective. And then also that correction, because when it is internationalization and localization, are you saying the right things? We've been talking about it throughout the whole conversation about like something could mean the same word could have very different meanings, very different connotations. And that's, as the language learning models are getting smarter, they may understand some of those things, but it's still never going to be on the level that a human understands and that someone from that market understands. And so I love your call out of just hire someone who actually speaks French in the market that you're going for. Get yourself a French speaking marketer who lives in Switzerland if your goal is to expand to Switzerland. Which I do want to ask, do you have any tips? Because I think one of the things where we've seen with, even just projects that I've been on, it's kind of hard to find that talent. So do you actually have any tips of how people can do that?
Well, over the years, I've been lucky to work with a few translators, people who can actually do that. So I know some of them, but if not, I just ask around. I really ask around. In the UK, and I believe that happens in other countries as well, there is a an association of linguists. I can't remember the actual name. I know I was about to enter there before I left, but I think that is a very huge starting point. And if not, just ask another marketer, because one of the very beauties of digital marketing and social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., while it lasts, um, is that there are so many of us chatting, sharing content, and engaging in conversations. Why not asking them? Why not asking somebody who may be able to help you out? Ask directly without any problem whatsoever. Just post a message. Somebody will actually help you out. There are other linguists associations in your target markets. You just need to ask. It's not as difficult as it looks like, and it definitely isn't as expensive as it looks like, because unknowingly, translators actually get paid a lot less money than they should. The same with designers, I have to say, although we are not talking about design here. But I mean, the kind of work that they do is highly specialized, very complicated, very complex as well. And so I think brands need to take that into account as well when hiring a professional. In the same way, they are hiring SEOs, they are hiring CRM person, they are hiring an IT person as well. Those are highly specialized jobs and very valuable, but the same are with linguists. So just lose that this being afraid and just kind of embrace it, because it's actually very interesting when you talk to another linguist as well, because the way they approach things are slightly different as well, can give you some ideas.
Yeah, there has been some top level intuition and insight that we got into these kind of projects. I'm taking home a few mantras from this episode. I think the first would be, don't rely that the language spoken somewhere means the same thing in another part of the world, even though they're speaking the same language. Hire good, effective strategists. It's going to cost you less than relying on other shortcuts and stuff. And I think the third one is, you need to get things done. By relying on other stuff, yes, like get the tools, but just do the work.
Yep, I think that's all true.
Yeah. If you want to go international, it takes work. It's an important.
Yeah, definitely.
Remember, it's not magic. It doesn't happen automatically. It's an investment.
It's not a duplicate out.
But the benefits are there for you to reap as well. So it's very exciting going international. Yes. And staying international is very exciting as well. But it takes a little time and effort to actually do so, particularly right now when the market, the actual landscape is very overcrowded. It really is overcrowded, and it will continue to be like that, because I have read recently that the trend in e-commerce is still going international. So you have to make sure that you stand out for the right reasons in the right markets, and that you actually make the effort to put in the work to make sure that you get the benefits later on.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was a great talk.
Thank you. I love the topic, really. So there are so many ramifications that you can actually discuss things from many different angles, and this is something that I love.
Well, it shows, and yes, we very much appreciate your insight and sharing your wisdom with us today.
I appreciate yours, ladies, as well.
And hopefully our audience appreciates it too.
Yes. Thanks everyone for tuning in for another episode of Opinionated SEO Opinions.
And in case you have any other questions related all things SEO, we're expecting them at thegrey.company/ask-SEO-questions. Yes, wonderful. So where can our listeners find you, Montse?
Well, I am very active on LinkedIn and Twitter. I've got a professional website coming up very, very, very soon. It's Montserrat Cano.com. So it's basically my name and my surname with a hyphen.com. And they can leave a message in there, and while it gets fully published, and happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Looking forward to seeing it. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.